Hey guys, in this video I'm going to give you an overview of Adobe XD, one of my favorite design softwares. This video is perfect for beginners, so even if you never opened up Adobe XD, this video is perfect for you, but also for intermediate users that really want to consolidate all of the basics by using Adobe XD in the most efficient and practical way. Now, I've been a designer for over 8 years now, and this is part of a course that I'm creating on Adobe XD, so check soon on that. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. So let's get started and let's download Adobe XD. So the very first thing that you want to do is to go to this URL, or alternatively you can simply Google Adobe XD and click on either one of these two URLs. You're going to be redirected to this landing page where you can download Adobe XD starting for free, or you can buy it now using this option. Now the great thing about Adobe XD is that it's available for both Mac and Windows. So simply click on start for free. If it's the first time you downloaded Adobe XD, you need to create an account or sign in your Adobe account, and then after that you're going to be able to download it. And once you download it, simply click on the Adobe XD icon, which you're going to see in your downloads or applications folder, and this window is going to appear. Now that you successfully downloaded Adobe XD, you're going to see this screen right here once you click on the Adobe XD icon, and this window basically gives you some initial suggestions in order to create a new file from scratch, and you can decide upon different presets which are going to be artboard presets. So for example, I can select the default dimensions for iPhone X, iPhone 6, or all of the other ones which you see over here. We also have some tablet presets as well as some web presets. Or if you want a custom specific size and width and height, you can simply enter them here, and then you can simply press enter or click on the icon, and the same is true for each and every one of these. You can simply select and then you're going to click and a new Adobe XD file is going to open. Now, just before we do that, I also want to mention that on the side we have some news from Adobe XD and some useful information. And on the bottom part, you're going to see your recent projects. So of course, these are going to be different than mine's. And the recent projects are going to constantly change because they're going to show the most recent ones. So this is the very last one I worked on, and this is the one before. So it goes in the order by which we read. Now on the left, we also have a menu which we're going to explore in more detail in upcoming videos, since there's going to be other topics. But for the time being, let's just click on the web, and we're going to see how this works. So as you can see, a new Adobe XD window just appeared with the web 1920 by 180 pixels. In this video, I'm going to give you a basic overview of the interface in Adobe XD, and then in the upcoming videos, we're going to go in depth exploring all of these features in detail. So the very first thing that you're going to see once you open up Adobe XD is that at the very central area, you're going to see your artboard and the canvas which is surrounding it. Now I can move around in the canvas by using the scroll wheel, or I can also use the space bar and then click and move around the mouse with the left mouse button. Now another thing which we can see is that we're surrounded by menu items. So at the very top menu item, we can see that we're currently in design mode, but there's also some other modes which are prototype, which we're going to explore in a future video, as well as the share mode. And we also have a small house icon, which if we click on, we're going to see the window which we just saw a moment ago. And let's go back into the design mode. And at this present moment, we have this section, which is the layers panel. So over here, we are going to see the artboards. And if we click on it and we have some layers, we're going to see the layers. And we're going to explore that in just a moment. And on the very left, we can see that we have all sorts of different tools that we're going to explore one by one. And we also have some icons at the very bottom, and at the moment we selected the layers, but we can untoggle it by simply re-clicking on the layers icon. We can also click on the plugin section, and over here we're going to see plugins which are very useful, and we're going to explore in a lot of details in just a moment. And on the right side, we're going to find all sorts of different options that are going to allow us to modify, edit, and update different elements which we have at our disposal. And we're going to use this section all of the time during our design work. Now, you can also see the name of the Adobe XD file at the very top center. And if you click on it, you can see that you can rename it to whatever document name which you want, and you can also select if you want the document in the cloud or if you want it stored in your computer. And this is a premium feature, so you'll need a premium plan for that. And then once you're good to go, and if you want to select and save it on your computer, simply click on here, and you can easily choose the exact area where the file is going to be stored in either your Mac or your PC. And then once you're happy with that, simply click on save, and you're gonna be good to go. Now, another feature which is really interesting and really powerful in Adobe XD is the invite to document tool, since you can collaborate with other team members and clients. And over here, you're going to be able to see the device preview, the desktop preview, but we're going to explore that once we go into the in-depth elements of the prototype. Now, you can also select the zoom, and this is basically going to zoom in 100%. It's going to zoom in 25%, and we're going to explore some more zoom options as well. So there's a lot of that's about to come that we're going to discuss and unveil. In this quick video, I'm going to show you how to zoom in and zoom out in a few different ways, as well as move around in the Adobe XD canvas. So the very first thing that you can do is if you have a magic mouse or a regular mouse, you can use the scroll bar or touch bar on your mouse in order to move up and down. And with the magic mouse, you can also move laterally. And another way you can do it is by holding and keeping pressed the space bar and clicking at the same time with the left mouse button and holding it. You can see that you can easily move around and anchor to a specific portion of the design and move yourself around the canvas. So another way you can zoom in and zoom out is by using Command plus and on the keyboard, and Command minus in order to zoom out. So this is going to zoom in and out in a few different increments. And another way you can zoom in and zoom out is by using the very top right drop down. You're going to see a few presets by which you can zoom in and zoom out with a specific percentage in relation to the actual canvas you are working on. In Adobe XD, artboards represent each of the screens that you design for your mobile app, pages for your website, or other projects. And when creating a new project, you can typically choose an artboard size to start with, as we've seen in one of the previous videos. So if you click on the home icon right here, you're going to see this loading, and basically this is going to enable you to sort by a few artboards presets, such as for mobile, for tablet, and even for web, or you can add your own width and custom height. So the other way that you can create artboards is simply clicking here on the artboard tool, and you're going to see on the very right that you're going to have a few presets that you can choose, and these are going to be similar to the ones in the home screen. So you can simply click on, for example, iPhone X, XS, and 11 Pro, and you're going to see that the artboard has been created. Now, if we click on return, we can actually create an artboard by ourselves by simply clicking and holding after we clicked on the artboard tool. Now, let's say that we want to change the size of this artboard. Well, the easiest way is to simply go on one of these elements on the very borders of the artboard. And you can simply click with the left mouse button, and while holding the left mouse button, you can simply resize the actual artboard. Now, there's another way that you can resize the artboard, and also where you can see exactly the width and the height of the artboard, and that is by using the right column, where you can see over here there's width and height, and in this case we have a width of 1427 pixels and a height of 1047 pixels. Now, if we simply select this number and we change it, for example, to 500, and we press enter, you're going to see that we're now going to have 500 pixels of height. And if we change the width to 1000, you can see that the artboard has now changed. Now, you can see the artboards on the very left. As you can see over here, there's artboard 1. And if we create another artboard, you're going to see that more artboards are going to be added on the very left. Now, another thing which is quite important is that you can lock the aspect of the artboard. So by doing this, you can essentially change the values. And by the way, you can also use Shift plus the up and down arrow keys in order to move and resize the artboard in increments. And you can see that the original ratio is going to be preserved. So this is going to be even more clear if we do a width of 500, and then we're going to unlock it so that we can change the height also to 500. And if we lock it again and we update the number, and we can also use directly adding a number right here, you can see that it's always going to be a perfect square. So definitely something to keep in mind, and we'll continue in the next video. In Adobe XD, you can easily save your file in just a few clicks. So the very first thing that you want to consider is that you want to name the file. So for example, over here, we're going to rename the file on as a dashboard, and we're going to save it in the cloud document. Now, what this enables you to do is basically, as it explains here, it's going to save your document and work from any device, even when you're disconnected. And you can click over here to learn more, and this link is going to bring you to the Adobe link. Now, another feature which is for premium users is that you can save your file in your own computer. So by simply clicking here and clicking on this file right here, you can go on desktop or any other place in your computer, and you can save the file right in the specific folder and location which you prefer. Now, once we click on save, the document, of course, is going to be saved. And an interesting feature is that whenever you make some edits on the current file, you're going to see an asterisk if the file is not saved until this most recent update. So whenever you see an asterisk, you know that you might want to save the file in order to have the file saved on as the very last version. Now, there's also some other ways you can save the file. You can simply go on File, and then you're going to see two options. The first one is Save, and the second one is Save As. If you click on Save, you're going to simply save the file on with its current document name and location. But if you click on Save As, you're going to be able to choose the location again where you want to save the file, so either on your computer or in the cloud, and then you can click on save in order to finish the action. Now, another thing which is quite useful to learn is the shortcut in order to save the file and also the save as. So basically you can, if you want to just save the file, you can use Command plus S, and you're going to see that this is saving and now it's saved. And if you want to save as, you're going to want to use the shortcut Command Shift and S, and you're going to be redirected to this model window right here, which prompts you to again save the file either in the cloud or in your computer. So this is pretty much it when it comes to the saving options in Adobe XD, and I'll see you in the next video. Layers in Adobe XD are an adaptation of the layers in software such as Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop that you know and depend on, but they're reimagined for UX designers. If you use the other softwares such as Sketch and Figma, the principles are very similar. So the way that the layers work is basically we have the left section, which is all about the layers. If you don't see it, as it might be like this by default, you can simply click on the second icon from the bottom, which is the layers. You can also use the shortcut Command Y in order to access it or in order to hide it and show it. And as you can see in this example, we have 3 layers types. So the first one is an image, the second one is typography, and the third one is a shape. Now, as you can see, we have different thumbnails for these different icons, and this one in particular, it's grouped, which is the arrow. And in order to see what the shape looks like, we're going to ungroup it, since this is inside a folder. Now, if you ungroup it, we can see the third icon, which is this pen tool icon, which refers to the vector layers. So as you can see, there's different thumbnails for each and every one of these layers. And you can also filter by items. So you can filter only by images and also by shapes or text. And especially if you're going to have multiple layers in the artboard, this can be really useful in order to identify specific type of layers. But for this instance, we're just going to keep it at all items. And if you click back in the artboard, you can see that you can basically access the artboard from a high level, or the artboards if you have multiple of them, and then you can simply click directly inside the item and you can access the layer. Now, this is it for this video. We're going to explore many more features about layers in the upcoming videos. In this quick video, I'm going to show you how to lock and hide layers. Now, this process is extremely simple and can be really useful, especially when you're working on documents with a lot of layers and you want to organize the workflow in a certain way. So the way you can lock a layer is you can simply select the layer in and of itself, and then you can click on lock, or alternatively use Command plus L in order to access the shortcut. Now we're just going to click on this lock icon, and as you can see now, the icon at the very top left is a lock icon. So that means that we cannot select the layer or move the layer around. So if we actually select both of these layers, I cannot essentially select it. So this is going to be really useful, especially when you're working with a lot of layers in the background, and maybe you're having some work to do with layers in the foreground, and this can definitely be quite useful. Now, another useful feature about Adobe XD layers is that you can also hide them. Now we're going to unlock this layer by re-clicking on the icon. Now we're going to click on hide, which you can access also using the shortcut Command I. And now you can see that the layer is not visible, and we won't even have a border outline like in the lock state. So this means that we can literally move layers on top of it, and we won't be able to see it all together. We will still be able to see it though in the column on the left, the layers column. So this is still going to be visible, but the layer is going to have less opacity, and it's also going to have this crossed eye icon. So basically this is telling us that the layer is not present in the canvas, it's not visible, but it's still present in the artboard. So we haven't deleted this layer, we simply made it not visible, and if we click on show again, you're going to be able to see it again and edit it and access its full features. So this is it when it comes to the lock and hide layers, and I'll see you in the next video. Collecting layers into groups can be really useful, especially when you're dealing with larger, more complex projects with a lot of layers and the organizational issues that can arise as a consequence. Now, the way you can create a group is, well, first of all, you need to select all of the layers which you want in that specific group. You can do it by simply using the left mouse button, and while clicking, you can simply cover the entire area, selecting all of the individual layers which you want in the group. And as you can see here, we're going to see this blue overlay, which indicates the area which we're covering. And of course also the individual selections of the individual layers. Now another way you can do that is by selecting the first layer of the group, and you can use the shift button and then the left mouse button all the way to the amount of layers which you want. So basically this is going to cover all three of them. Another way you can do it is using command and then clicking individually on the layers that you want in the artboard, and you can click again in order to deselect them, so you can go really granular with this option. Now we're just going to select all of these layers right here, and then we're going to right click and click on group, and this is going to create a group. So whenever we select any one of these layers and we move them around or even resize the group, they're all going to be changed in relation to one another. So the way you can ungroup this group is basically going on and clicking on the right mouse button and then clicking on ungroup, and this is going to basically bring the layers to their initial state, which is by themselves essentially. Now another thing you can consider doing, and that I actually do all of the time, is using shortcuts. So I'm just going to select all of the layers and then using Command plus G in order to create a group really fast, and then Command Shift and G in order to ungroup them. So this is it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. In this video we're going to talk about grids in Adobe XD. So in order to create our grid, we need to create an artboard first and select it. So that's what we're gonna do right now. So I just clicked on the artboard, and as you can see, I already see a grid, but this usually by default is going to be unchecked. And if you go here on the right and you check under the grid section, you're going to see the grid appear in the artboard. Now, what this grid is essentially a grid that's going to help you to create more consistent designs and alignments, which are going to be useful for the entire design composition. And when it comes to grids, you actually have two options. The first one is the layout grid, and the second one is the square grid. So as you can see, the square grid only has two options. The first one is you can select the color of the grid itself, and you have all of the color options which usually have as always. And the second option is you can literally change the size of the square grid. So if you want to make it smaller, just use smaller numbers, and if you want to make it bigger, just use bigger numbers. So pretty straightforward. Now the other option is the layout grid, and over here again, similarly to the grid and to the other grid, you can essentially change the color to whatever color you desire, and you can also change the number of columns in the grid. So if I want, for example, 16 columns, I can simply set it to 16. If I want 8, I can simply set it to 8. So yeah, pretty straightforward. You can also change the gutter width, which is the gutter width is essentially the distance between one column and the other. So you can increase that and you can always decrease that. And with the number of the gutter, the column width is also going to change, because obviously if you have a bigger gutter width, the column width is going to become smaller. And you can individually change the column width and the gutter width, and they're going to automatically adjust. So the very last thing, it's the different margin for each side. This is an option which you can have. But even before we do that, we can set the link to the left and right margins by simply changing this value right here. And as you can see, for example, in this case, actually, let's just set it like this. So these are set by default. And then if we click on this icon, it's going to essentially change the margins between either the top, the right, or the bottom, or the left section. So you can see which one is which, because as you change the as you click on these different values, you're going to see this little thumbnail with a blue border, which is going to indicate where you're making the change. So for example, if I want to make the change in the top, you can see that I'm going to go in this one. If I want to change it on the right, it's going to be this one, and so on for the bottom and for the left. So this is pretty much it when it comes to grids in Adobe XD. I'll see you in the next video. Pasting appearances can help you save tons of time when you're working on a design project. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. So appearances can work throughout different options and levels. So we're gonna select this first layer right here in order to show you how this works. So in this layer, we simply have a rectangle with a gradient fill and a border applied to it, and also some radius on the top borders. And we're gonna simply copy this, and you can also use Command+C. And then we're going to right click on this rectangle below, and we're going to click on paste appearance. Now, as you can see, the rectangle basically took the appearance of the rectangle above, which we just copied. And you can do this throughout multiple layers as well. So as you can see, this can really help quite a bit. And this not only works with vector files, but with vector layers, but also with images. So in this case, we have this image of this dashboard with this background, and it's all one single image. And we're going to copy this image. Then we're going to click on paste appearance again. And as you can see, you can paste the image inside a shape, and you can do that throughout different shapes as well. So you can literally use any vector shape that you want, and you can paste the appearance. So this is it when it comes to this video. In upcoming videos, we're going to show more applications of the paste appearance, especially when you're going to work on the live projects, which are going to be really exciting. See you in the next video. In this video, I'll show you how you can invite a team member to your project, being a friend of yours, a colleague, or a client. So let's start by going here on the very top right, and you can see that there is this invite to document icon. So we're just gonna click on it, and we're going to see this model right here, which basically tells us that we need to save the document in the cloud in order to invite people. So we're gonna do just that because we haven't done it already. If your document is already in the cloud, you will not see this, but you're going to see the window which is going to appear in just a moment. So we're just going to rename this document to Teams, and I'm going to save it here in the cloud documents, the very top option. And now it's saving, and now we can invite a individual to this specific file. So I'm going to enter one of my secondary emails, and as you can see, this message appears. So basically you can leave a message. So I'm just gonna write, "Hi, I am your colleague," and I'm going to click on invite. Now, as you can see, we have a notification that the invite has been sent. So the other person is going to receive an email notification, which is going to prompt him or her to go inside the to access the file of Adobe XD. So this is how you invite a team member in Adobe XD. In this video, I'll talk about shapes in Adobe XD. So all the shapes, you can see them at the very left in the toolbar. So starting from the rectangle, you can simply select it and you can create a rectangle. You can also change the size of the rectangle by using these tools right here, these control tools. And you can also modify the width over here. So if, for example, I want a rectangle to be 500 pixels of width and 200 in height, I can do it from here directly. I can also move the rectangle in the X and also in the Y position by adapting these values right here. Now, another thing that you can do is to rotate the rectangle, and you can also flip it either vertically or horizontally using these tools. Now, all of these options right here are also viable for the other shapes which we have at our disposal. So the other one, it's the oval, and I can just make it a circle by selecting Shift as I click and drag it, because if I do not click on Shift, it's going to be basically an ellipse. So something to keep in mind if you want to use a regular shape. And you can also apply the same for triangles. So if I'm not pressing Shift, I'm going to basically have the form move around freely. And if I click on Shift as I click and drag with the left mouse button, you can see that I can create this regular triangle form. Now we also have lines, which are going to be quite useful, especially in UI design. We're going to use these quite a bit. And we also have the pen tool for creating all sorts of vector shapes and forms. And we're going to explore the pen tool in more detail in one of the upcoming videos. But yeah, this is it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. In this video, we will discuss resizing options in Adobe XD. So in order to illustrate this concept, I'm going to create a rectangle, and I'm going to change the fill to this blue. And now we have a few options in order to resize this rectangle. The first one is to select it as we just did. We can just use these anchor points in order to modify the shape of the rectangle itself. I can also double click, and as you can see, I'm going to enter in this edit mode, which is essentially going to enable me to use these anchor points and create a different variation of the shape. And I'm also going to add the keyboard viewer so that you're going to be able to see all of the options which we're going to explore in just a moment. Now, another thing to consider when resizing an object is that if you're using the anchor points on the borders, on the corners, you can essentially change both the height and the width. However, if we're going to use one of these anchor points on the sides or on the top, you're just going to work with the width or the height. Now, another cool thing about Adobe XD is that if you select, if you click and hold Shift plus the left mouse button, you can resize an object maintaining its same ratio. And this is going to apply also for different type of objects, such as triangles or, for example, circles. So whenever we hold Shift, we're going to maintain the same ratios. Now let's delete these two elements, And let's discuss another way that you can resize an object in Adobe XD. So the second way is going on the very right section, and you can manually type in a width. So for example, we're going to enter 150 pixels. We're going to press enter, and as you can see now the rectangle is 150 pixels. And if you enter, for example, 400 here, you can see how the height now is 400. Now, as you can see on the right, there's going to be this lock icon, which is essentially the lock aspect. Now, if I click on the lock aspect and I change the height, for example, to 200 and I press enter, you can see that the width is also going to change according to maintain the ratio. So these are pretty much all that you need in order to resize elements in Adobe XD. In this video, we'll discuss fill options in Adobe XD. So the very first thing that we're gonna do is we're going to create a rectangle here. And as you can see on the very right, we're going to have the fill option. Now, by default, this is checked, but if we uncheck it, and this is actually going to be clear if we change the color, if we uncheck the fill, you can see that now we don't have it anymore. And in order to add it again, you simply have to check it. So make sure that this is checked whenever you want a fill in an object. Now, if we click on the actual color, you can see that we're going to be able to select the colors that we prefer. So over here we can select the hex value, and on the very right you can select the opacity. So this is going to be 0 opacity and all the way up to 100%. I can also manually change it directly here and add the exact opacity number which I prefer. Now you can also change the hex code. So this is actually going to be this hex code of this color that we see right here on the left. We can also select between RGB and also HSB colors. Now on the very top, you can also see that solid colors is not the only option that we have at our disposal. We also have linear gradient, which is going to enable us to create gradients. I can simply click over here on the first one, and I can click on the very second gradient, and as you can see, I can change it. And in order to change the orientation of the gradient, I can simply use these points right here in order to move the gradient around and create the gradient effect which I'm looking for. You can also use the radial gradient in order to create a radial gradient appearance. And as you can see over here, you can essentially move around the radial gradient and create the form which you desire the most. You can also save a color, and this is going to be referred as the color swatch. So as you can see, I just saved the specific color, and I can access it again if I create, for example, another element right here. I select it, and as you can see, that solid color has been saved. So this is pretty much it when it comes to fills, and we'll move on to the next video. In this video, we'll discuss borders in Adobe XD. In order to illustrate this concept, we're going to create a rectangle, and as you can see by default, we're going to have the borders checked. Now, similarly to what we recently discussed with the fills, if we uncheck the borders, you're not going to be able to see them, but the border properties is still going to be there. So just check it, and you're going to be able to see the border. Now, one of the most important properties about the border is the size. So as you can see here, I can increase the size by simply increasing the number which we have right here. And similarly to the fill, you can easily change the border color directly from this color palette right here. You can also access the color swatches, and you have pretty much the same properties right here. So I can change the opacity right here. I can also change to RGB or to hex code, and all the properties are pretty much the same as the fill video, as we discussed just a moment ago. We also can use the dashes in order to create these dash border effects. I can also increase or decrease the gap between one dash and the other. And also, let's just make this one to 0. Another interesting thing about the borders is that we have a few more options right here. So the first option is essentially where we want the border to be located. So at this present moment, the border is an inner stroke. So basically it's inside this element. We can also have it as an outer stroke. And this concept maybe is going to be clearer if we add a fill. So you can also use it as an outer stroke. So as you can see, this is the actual object, and the stroke is outside of the object. And we can also have it in the center. So kind of like a way in between the two. Another thing that we can do is we can round the border's cap. Now, since a rectangle doesn't have is a contained element, we cannot see this, but if we create a line and we increase the border size and now we round the cap, you can see that now we can basically have rounded caps at each of the two edges. I can also have projecting caps, which are essentially going to extrude to an extra point in space compared to the default, which is going to be right at the very edge. So this is pretty much it when it comes to borders, and I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll discuss Boolean operations in Adobe XD. Now this can be really useful, especially when you're doing illustrations and working with shapes. So the very first thing that we're gonna do in order to illustrate this concept is we're going to create two rectangles. So here's the first one, and I'm going to duplicate this by holding on Option Alt and also by clicking on with the left mouse button and dragging it. And I'm going to make these bigger. And I'm also going to make the second one blue. So in order to access the Boolean operations, we need to select both layers. And then, as you can see at the very top right, we have the first Boolean operation, which is add. And if you click on add, you can easily see how these two objects merged. Now we're also going to add the layers panel here in the equation so that you can see exactly what's happening. So basically this was a union, and the Boolean operation in and of itself, it's essentially adding these two shapes. So pretty straightforward. If we select the second one, you can see that this is going to be the difference. So it's basically subtracting from the top layer. Now, if we try the third one, this is going to be the intersection. So basically intersecting between the two layers. And the fourth one is the exclusion. So the exclusion between these two. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that if you wanted to undo this, you can simply click on the Boolean operation, and as you can see, we still have the two rectangles, so we can freely move them around. And this is true for each and every one of these Boolean operations that we just tried. But if you want to not have this operation anymore, you can simply ungroup them by using Shift, Command, and G. And you're going to have the two separate layers once again. So this is it for Boolean operations, and I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll talk about how to use drop shadows. So in order to illustrate this concept, we're going to create a rectangle, and we're going to remove the border and add a fill. And now we're going to click on the checkbox next to the shadow. And as you can see, now we have a shadow. Now, if we make the fill white at this present moment, you can see that the shadow is going to be more visible. And in order to add more blur to the shadow, we can simply click over here at the very right, and we can increase the amount so that the shadow is going to cover a bigger area. Now, another thing that we can do is to move the Y and the axis. So I can increase the number right here in order to have the shadow move down the Y axis. And I can also add negative values in order to have the shadow go up on the Y axis. Now you can do the same also with the X axis. And this of course is going to bring the shadow either on the right or on the left. We can also increase the opacity of the shadow, since by default it's at around 60%, and we can turn it all the way up to 100, and of course we can change the color just like we can do with the fills and the borders. So you can create all sorts of different type of shadows, and again, you're also going to have the options for the hex value, the RGB, HSB. You can use the eye picker tool, and also access the color swatches. So you can even create shadows with the same color swatches as you have in your other elements in Adobe XD. So this is pretty much it when it comes to shadows, and I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll talk about blend modes. So blend modes are a feature which you can access by simply selecting a layer, and you can see them right here. If you click on it, you're going to see a drop down, and in this drop down there's various blend modes. So each and every one of these are going to essentially change, and in this case we have the dashboard on top of a blue rectangle. And as you can see, as we're changing the different blend modes, we're going to have different effects. Now the layer is still on top of it. The only thing that changes is essentially the blend mode, and if we move the layer around and also the rectangle, you can see how these are going to be essentially reflected on top of one another. So similar to a Boolean operation, but it's quite different thing, since this is going to apply on the actual levels. Now, as you can see, it's for the most part, like, you're not going to use them a whole bunch, but when you do, it's all about trying and testing them out. Also, in correlation to the opacity, you can really achieve some really interesting visual effects with blend modes. And yeah, so this is definitely a tool to consider and keep in mind. So this is it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Masks can be really useful in Adobe XD because they allow you to mask one object inside one other. So in order to give you a practical demonstration, I'm going to select this rectangle right here, which is an image, and I'm going to locate it here beneath this other rectangle. And now I'm going to select both of them. In order to create a mask, I need to be sure that this top level is above the image if I want to mask specifically the image. So I'm gonna go here and under Object, I'm gonna click Mask with Shape. And as you can see, now we just created a mask, and we're only going to see the portion of the image which overlays on the top part of the actual object. As you can see also on the layers panel, the icon changed, and I can simply click on the icon, and I'm going to see both the rectangle and also the image. So they behave in a similar way to the Boolean operations which we saw just a moment ago. The only difference is that this is specifically a mask. And you can also mask shapes. So if we're going to go over here and we just selected these two objects, we go under Object, Mask with Shape, you can see that the specific section that overlays the polygon and the ellipse is going to be masked. So this is it when it comes to masks, and I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll discuss alignment options in Adobe XD. So alignment options are essentially options which you can find at the very top right, and we have a few of them. So let's start with the vertical alignment options. So I just selected these four rectangles, and I'm going to click on the very first one, which is align left. And as you can see, basically all of these squares have been aligned to the left. Now this is going to be even more clear if we actually create different shapes and different widths. So if we do alignment left again, you can see that now all of these rectangles are essentially aligned using this axis right here. Now if we select all of these rectangles again and we go with align center horizontally, you can see that now the axis shifted and it is basically in the center. Now if we do the same, but instead we go with align right, you can see that now the y-axis is essentially on the very right. Now there's another feature which is the distribution, which is still part of the alignment. And now let's, in order to show you this, I'm just going to select all of these and I created an uneven vertical distribution between one rectangle and the other. And now I'm going to click here on distribute vertically. Now, as you can see, we're going to have the same space between one rectangle and the other. So this is going to be really useful, especially if you're dealing with a lot of elements in that you need to basically have equal distance between one another, either vertically or horizontally, as we're going to discuss in just a moment. So as you can see, you can do this really easily and in a fast and efficient way. Now let's talk about the other type of alignments, which are essentially alignments which are vertical. Now the same concepts are pretty much shared also for the vertical alignments, but let's discuss them right now. So as you can see, if I go and I click on align middle, we're going to have the same alignment as the vertical one, but this time it's going to be horizontally. Now if you select all of these rectangles right here and we click on align bottom, the axis is going to be the bottom y-axis, and if we do the same with align top, you can see as that now the alignment is at the very top. Now the same principle is going to apply for the distribution. So let's just create some random patterns here of distance between one rectangle and the other, and now let's click on distribute horizontally. Now, as you can see, we achieved exactly the same effect, and I'm going to show you even another example right here, which I'm just going to make up by selecting these rectangles with the left mouse button and holding Alt or Option. And I'm just going to select all of them and create this equal distribution from one element to the other. So these are the alignment options in Adobe XD. If you're going to do a lot of design in Adobe XD, you're definitely going to use them quite a bit. So hope this video was useful, and I'll see you in the next video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please leave a thumbs up. And if you're interested in more of these type of videos, on my YouTube channel I have over 300 videos on Adobe XD, both software tutorials, and also giving you freelance design business advice of all sorts. So if you're interested in those type of topics, feel free to check it out. And without further ado, we'll